Flushing, hot topic. This was
Okay. All right.
I actually went on my Instagram and I did a story and asking people for these controversial topics for this particular talk. So shout out to those folks that mentioned flushing as one of them. That was on my initial list, but there was a ton of people that want to know your thoughts on flushing. So what do you think about flushing? What's your thoughts on
All
that?
right. Okay. So the term flushing is thrown around with way too many definitions, and I think some of the definitions that are being thrown around are a little bit out of the ballpark, and some of them make sense. Some of them make perfect sense. So when I think of the term flushing, I immediately think of revival almost. Anytime I need to flush something, it means my plant is in an oopsie state and I need to fix it, is the way I look at flushing. So I am trying to remove a buildup in the soil so that my plant isn't uptaking that overabundance of nutrients that's in there. So I'm not removing the nutrients from the plant physically. I am allowing the plant to eat what's already being what's already inside its system, and I'm removing it from the soil. Because the way I look at it is that your soil life is the most important thing in my grow, is that if my soil is healthy, my plants are healthy. There's no way, from everything that I've learned and everything that I've done, there is no physical way that you can remove what's already in your plant. So if you're at week 9 and your plant is obvious signs of way too much nitrogen, you've got the curling leaves, it's so green that you can like see yourself in it because it's mirroring back at you, and you're saying, oh, I'm just going to throw 10 liters of water in it right now and harvest it in a week. And you're saying, oh, that's going to remove all those nutrients that's in that plant to give me a better smoke. That's not happening. And we just need to get that out of our brain, because that's not happening and it's never going to happen. What flushing is that we are adding water to whatever we need to do to revive it, to repair it, to start it over, is what we're doing. How I grow, because I grow with top dressing, and my last top dress in flower is at 6 weeks of flower, I don't feed anything except for water the last 3 weeks. So a lot of people look at me and say, oh, you're flushing anyways. I'm like, no. I top dress. It's slow release, meaning I top dress 6 weeks, meaning takes a week to start to slow release. So by week 7, it starts to slow release into the roots. Now the plant's uptaking it. So by all week 8, it's getting full nutrients. And then by the time week 9, week 10, when I harvest, it's pretty much ate up all the nutrients in its soil to the point where it's now where I need to start adding it again. So it's depleted all the nutrients, and that's when I harvest. So when it's depleted all the nutrients in the soil, not me trying to force the nutrients out of the plant, because that just doesn't happen. And it is a daily topic on TBL. I think just the term, is just not used correctly, because I just think people are thinking it's physically removing it out of the plant, which is not. I think if we just change the term of flushing to like revive or like final step or something like that, I think it would make a lot more sense. And then going into like the flushing products, like there's a lot of products out there that are literally advertising this flushing stuff. Like, put it at the end of your grow because it'll do this and this and this and this and this, right? And you're thinking, okay, like how is this working? And then you look at a lot of these products, they're humic, they're fulvic acid based, or they're magnesium based, and all that stuff does is it breaks down what's already in your soil, and it allows your plant to uptake it, or it allows you to get it out of the soil faster. So that's all that stuff does. It's not doing anything to help break down your plant's nutrients in the cell walls and this and that. It just doesn't work. And I'm just hoping that the term flushing changes to the point where people are realizing flushing doesn't create white ash. White ash doesn't mean quality smoke. High resinous plants will produce more of a black ash than a white ash, and it's just known. And that doesn't mean it's a lower quality plant. It means it's full of resin, which is perfect for extraction, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. There have been studies that back up what you say, as far as it doesn't change the nutrient content in the actual plant. There have been leaf tissue tests done on flushed versus unflushed plants, and they didn't show a difference. So if you're flushing your plants at the end of the grow or stopping nutrients at the end of the grow for a week or 2 weeks, there was no difference there. Now you mentioned for organics, you're feeding on week 6 or so, right? And so you have that slow release, and the plant is basically fed all the way up until you chop it down, harvest. You mentioned you also grow synthetics. Are you feeding synthetics all the way up until harvest, or are you stopping feeding at a certain point, like a week before or 2 weeks before, so the plant will start to senescence? You'll start to get a fade happen before harvesting.
A fade happen. If I'm using synthetics all the way through, before I went to what I'm using now, I was using more of, I think it was called a veganic mix. So it was organic to the point where they couldn't add the vegan solution, so they added a synthetic variable to it. So that's what I used to use. And a lot of the guys who watch me can still use this same stuff, and they are growing some of the nicest plants I've seen. A lot of them don't flush at all. They push it right to the end. I do think not feeding the last week, I think is smart. Because I do think you don't want to harvest at a completely green plant. I think it makes sense to harvest a plant that has a natural fade to it. Like, it just makes perfect sense too, because when the plant is naturally fading, it means it is putting itself in the final life stretch. Means it is trying to push out more trichomes. The trichomes on the plant, the resin on the plant, is its defensive structures or its defensive mechanism, so that when it is fading, the plant is signaling itself that this is my end. This is my end. I have to reproduce to either get myself going, which is why I would pump out more resin to try and get pollen stuck to me, right? Or we pump out more resin because that's the stuff that we want, right? So in turn, that anytime I look at a fade in a plant, that means, in my opinion, that means that plant is stressed, or that means that plant is ready to go. So when the plant is ready to go, that means, in my eyes, it's already in its final stage of pushing out those trichomes, pushing out those colors, doing whatever you need to try and get the best possible plant.
This clip is brought to you by AC Infinity. Use discount code MrGrow at 15 to save on any of their products.